This is Truth Be Told.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Truth Be Told. We're so excited you're joining us. Thank you. We want to thank you viewers for watching. We're so grateful that you guys are inviting us into your house and that we get to share just what's on our minds and what's on our hearts, even as crazy and silly as it can be. We just love that you guys are on this journey with us. And so we're going to be talking about role models today. And I just want to ask you ladies, who are some of your role models?
First,
and why?
We sing the song. I'm sorry. I only hear that. I can be your hero, baby. I can kiss.
I didn't even know
you don't want me to sing
that.
Enrique.
Is that
right?
Nicki Minaj?
No. It is Enrique.
Actually, she did do a remix. No, I'm just kidding.
Is Enrique still active?
I don't know.
Is he still
Enrique, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on the show. Let us know. Let us know.
Well, speaking of Enrique, I do think, okay, so I'm going to say my mom, obviously Nana, but my Nana, man, she is a great role. She passed actually, but I look at my life and I would be, I don't know, I look at my siblings and my parents and all the opportunities that, you know, her work has, it's still bearing fruit today. And so I just want to say that because she, you know, became a single mom, like, unexpectedly and went back to school and worked like really, really hard to make everything happen for, my mom and her siblings. And all of them went on to have really, you know, great careers, and
that's so wonderful.
So wonderful. I love that. Thanks, Nana.
Yeah.
I feel like I have so many role models. Like, it's hard for me to just choose, but I'm just going to pick a couple. One of my role models is, it's Richard Branson, which may be a little bit like crazy for some people, but I love him. And one of the reasons I love him is because he has dyslexia. And I struggled a lot growing up when I was reading and just like with traditional learning. And I just love the way that he thinks outside of the box. And I love that he has created this empire, not because of his weaknesses, but in spite of his weaknesses. Like, he's thought outside of the box so many times, and it's made him into this like self-made billionaire. And I just think it's really inspiring. I read his books. I've read several of his books, and every time I read them, I'm like, we can change the world. We're going to change the world. Like, so he just gets me very inspired. So I love him. I love Coco Chanel because she just like obliterated all stereotypes in her day of women fashion designers and became like the first like fashion house to be run by a female and at the helm. And I love it. I love that she kind of had her own style and didn't let society tell her, you know, how it should look and how it should be, but she kind of like blazed her own trail. So I love people who are, I tend to gravitate towards role models that are pioneers and builders and doing something a little, not controversial, but just a little bit against the grain. And so that's just really inspiring for me. So, yeah.
I feel like, as cliche as it sounds, my parents are definitely two of my biggest role models.
That's
But I'm like, they're two people who overcame. I feel like I'm gonna cry every episode.
Yes.
Like they overcame so much in their childhoods, and I just remember like them telling me about how they met and when they got together, and they were just like, we want to break like the cycle of like broken families, or I don't know if that's the right terminology, but just like choose love.
Wow.
And I feel like you look at them and they're so in love and you would have no idea like where they came from.
Wow.
And so they're just like, they're amazing. And I feel like our family has had just a lot of like, me and my sister have done some out of the box things that my parents haven't understood, but they've always chosen to like support us and like champion us through it, like until there was understanding, you know?
Yeah.
So
cool.
They're amazing. Their relationship's amazing. And I feel like the way they raised a family is not perfect, but is
Pretty close.
pretty close. Yeah. Pretty close. We're pretty close. Yeah. No, I love them. Yeah.
It's really interesting to me, like, when I think about generations that have come before us, and, like, if you look at generational history, at least in this country, and I mean probably Canada and Australia. I don't know.
maybe.
Yeah, but I know we're both from New York.
Yeah.
And like everyone's grandparents are fresh off the boat, or like most people came during the Industrial Revolution, or So there's so many stories about people fighting adversity to settle somewhere, or like coming from somewhere, and they fought such. They were pioneers, but in such different ways. It was like, oh, we literally have to, make our life somewhere else. And now it's interesting because I feel like we're in this generation right now of people who pioneer like their own lives there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people who are like, okay, this is what the society says that I should do, but I'm actually gonna run this way, and they're championed. But it's interesting how it's like it's just really shifted, and a lot of that is because of those generations who've gone before us. So guys, like, honor some elderly people today for real. I feel like, no, for real though, like, I think that I had an attitude for a long time, like, oh, old people are so cute. Like, I know
I still think
they're
older
still
people
cute.
are cute.
Okay.
I love older people.
Y'all
They're
are
like
so
some of my
cute,
favorite
old people.
Yeah.
But for real,
You old people out there, we love you.
we love you.
You are young.
Yeah, I mean, only in age, young in heart. Anyway, I feel like I'm putting my foot in my mouth, but for real, I am growing to, I think, as I get older, realize like, wow, you have so much wisdom, and you're such a wealth, and you've overcome so much, and things that people have gone through, and they don't even like think about it, or they don't even like, sit in even the same things that we do anymore. It's like, well, when I was a kid, like I just had to move on from that, and so I just
walk to school uphill both ways.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, no shoes, no snow, barefoot.
Exactly. Like for me, like my grandma, so we had our own movement from when the war was happening with Hitler, and my grandma, she has like this phenomenal testimony, and it's honestly so easy to forget what her story is and to forget what grace looks like for her, and to remember like what she actually walked through. Like my grandma, she was in Russia, and one day the army came to the door, took her older brother and her dad, and never saw them again. And like my great grandma took, I think it was like 5 kids. My grandma was 5 at the time, took them and took a boat across to Canada. And like my great grandma was a very like just driven, hard woman, but she had to be to survive and to create opportunity for my grandma and her siblings. And so a lot of times it's really easy to forget like why she is the way she is and what's made her to be like who she is today. But she's a phenomenal grandma who like hosts so much from her heart, and like she can make food out of thin air. That woman, like, I admire her so much for how she can like cook. Like legitimately, I'm like, what? There was nothing in your fridge, and then it was this magical like transformation onto this table of splendor. And like she really worked hard to pour love into the family, and to also not let adversity and not let those hardships like harden her, but it actually like I'm very blessed to have her as my grandma, my grandpa as well. And so she's definitely like someone I looked up to, and her 80th birthday was last year, and we did a slideshow and sat for like a long time and learned about my grandma's history. And it was really eye-opening and like almost disappointing in myself that I was like, dang, like I forgot about her journey, and like her journey's led to mine, and it's so valuable to look up to them. And so if your grandparents are still around, or people that are older and have life experience, like ask them their stories, because they want to tell you. And I think that's something that doesn't really happen because we all have our phones in our faces. But I think like they want to tell you stories. Like
call them and interview them.
Yeah, like, you want to know where you've come from.
Yeah.
And I think that's so valuable and so important. Whether you feel like you connect with them well or not, I think that's something that shouldn't be missed. And it would, like, I would hate to have not had that opportunity to like understand where my grandparents have come from on both sides. And then another one's my sister, because she has 4 boys and somehow still keeps it together. So she's
she works so hard, and she's definitely someone where I've seen her sacrifice her desires, but she's also gotten so much back in return. And she's very gifted and always has been like a really generous person. And I was always someone who kind of thought about myself first. And so she's always kind of been that inspiring person in my life where I'm like, well, Katie is so selfless and she wants everyone to know how loved they are and make sure they're like just embrace. And I'm like in the wind, like flying around, and my sister's like, hey, like, you need to like pay attention to other people. And so she like kind of always reminds me and calls me out to like be aware of other people in my pictures. So
Yeah. I was having trouble as you guys were talking, like, oh man, like, how do I narrow it down? Because I feel like if I define a role model, it's people that inspire me, and I get inspiration from a lot of different people. But as I was like listening to you guys talk, I think the thing that kept sticking in my head was who specifically I was connected to that actually impacted my life. So, you know, not someone from afar that I could just see, but someone that actually tangibly helped be
Invested in
and transform my life. And I would have to say, one of my first mentors, Andrea, she took me under her wing. I remember I just moved to Texas from New York, and I was traveling all around Asia, living in Asia the year before that, and I didn't really have and know a lot of people, and I never had someone who took me under their wing and really just poured into me. And it wasn't weird. It was like we were doing life together. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like she put herself like above me, or there was no weird thing like that. I just felt like she came alongside of me and just like poured her life into me. And I think it was at a pivotal point in my life where I needed someone and didn't even realize it. And it literally helped put me in the direction that I am today in the most amazing way possible. And so I would have to say her, because she was the first person that came to my mind as I was kind of going through that. But it also posed a question for me of what do you guys define as a role model? I said someone who inspires me, but do you guys have any other things that you think kind of make a role model?
Oh, were you going
I was just going to echo what you said. I think people who inspire you, I mean, I didn't realize we're doing like family and people like who are in our lives. Like I thought it was like that lofty. Like,
but it could be anyone. Yeah.
Right, but I do have a lot of people in my family who inspire me. But I was like, I don't know, when some people say role model, that it's like, ooh, who in history, you know? And sometimes like we forget to look in our own families. And so I have a ton of I'm like you, I get easily inspired, and it can only be like a segment of someone's story that I get inspired by. I actually remember my grandma, she had her first baby while my grandpa was at war. And I think that my auntie was like a year old before he met his daughter.
Whoa.
Right, Mom? Check me on that. I'm not sure. Fact check. But I think Joaquin actually wasn't at home. He was in Colombia when I had my son. So I had to go through that whole birthing process and stuff without him. And it was like, I mean, it wasn't traumatic in a sense. I had my mom there, praise the Lord. But it definitely was like, I'm like, oh, I thought that was a big deal. And then, like, but my grandma actually raised my auntie for a whole year before. And, like, so her, but then, like, the sacrifice of my grandpa fighting for his country, but, like, having to, like, not neglect, but having to choose that moment, you know, instead of being able to go home and see his family. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. As a parent, I don't know how they did that, you know.
That
like,
would have been so difficult.
and it happened to so many people during that time in war, you know. So it was,
Yeah.
I think, like, character is also a really huge quality for me for a role model, like someone who exhibits character. And it's not perfection, because no one's perfect. Let's just put that out there really quick. And if anyone's positioning themselves that they're perfect, you probably don't want to look up to them, because you might get disappointed. Check out the episode before. But anyway, like, I think character is really important, like someone who's consistent, whether it's like when they make mistakes, how they handle it. That speaks a lot to me of looking up to someone, just kind of how they do their life, how they handle relationships, how they treat people just around them in general, especially when they're in leadership or own their own business. I find it so beautiful when I see people just not, put on this facade of like being better than anyone else. I just love humility in other people. That's a huge quality too. And I'm thinking about like role models, and Andrea exhibits all of those things. So
one of my role models is like a online thought leader type person. Her name's Marie Forleo. I don't know if
I love
her. So yeah, and I actually feel like it's like, why am I getting emotional? But it's so dumb. I'm like, this person. I'm like, no, but for real, like I remember I first started my business and I saw her videos like when I baby business like 8-9 years ago, and I was thinking about throwing in the towel, and someone sent me this video, and it actually like helped me keep going. And cool. Even to this day I like still like watch her show every almost every week, and really just connect with it and see like so much hope even in the way that she communicates and stuff that she does. But I remember I actually had a friend a couple years ago who worked with her, and she told me a story how like they worked together, and then things just weren't like it's not that she wasn't doing great work or it just wasn't lining up, but she was like, oh no, Marie called me, and she has a huge team, and she's like, no, she called me and she's like, hey, this isn't working out, or we're going in another direction. But I just like even knowing that like even though she was satisfied and then hearing like she had the character where she could have just hid behind like a whole team of other people to actually make a phone call and say like, hey, this is what's going on. I was like, wow, like that is the kind of leader that I want to be.
Yeah,
and so I just to echo what you say, like character matters. Like you can be such an inspiration, you can lead people, you can have book deals and whatever, but like what you do behind the scenes really does get out. Honestly, it really does.
It's true, and people will try to hide it, but it will always come to the surface. Like so, and that's the thing about character, that it's like it actually is sustainable if you have it intact. But if you compromise character, that will always be revealed. So for me, it's like having someone who's like really anchored in like character. To me, they can accomplish anything, even through the difficult times.
And I think that like having someone as a role model who's like has good character, won't waver on that, like it just like calls you, like there's something inside of you where you're like, I won't compromise on this, I won't compromise on that, like I want to be better. Like I feel like my biggest role model is my sister. And she's literally like, she's a year older than me, we're so close in age, and I just like, even in high school, she just like never wavered on her convictions. And I was just like, oh wow, I remember thinking like I have a choice to like also never waver on my convictions or like go down this other path, and I chose the other path. And then like later in life I was like, wait, no, like, and she just like stayed true to who she was and what she believed, and like loving people well. And I was like, oh wait, no, like that's actually like and it's just like awesome. So I think like in my everyday life, like she would be my role model, and it's like she's just been the same. I mean, of course she's grown and changed, but who she is and like what she's believed in and who she wants to become and her like commitment to growth and to her family is just like so sweet. And so I think it's really important to have, I don't know, I mean, I feel like I have more role models like in my day-to-day life than like these historical figures, and I'm like, I should probably have more like people who have done like these crazy amazing things, but I'm just like, I don't know.
Like, for me, I have always loved C.S. Lewis. And, I grew up just reading all of his books, and, like, that was something my dad always did, was read, like, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to my siblings and I was always so inspired by him and Tolkien, because what they created was, like, way before their time. And, like, what they created, they created on their own, but they were also very tight-knit, and like they were friends. They would meet for beer and talk about theology at this bar in England, and they would just talk about like theology or like their ideas, and it was like, that's so cool to see that they valued like finding someone that's creative with them and be like, and they bounced off of each other and they pulled creative souls into their lives where it probably was really, really rare, and it wasn't even like a common thing to have like talking animals and like weird like
my animal talk.
She does. Let me talk about a lion. And so it was like, that's always just been something that inspired me, was C.S. Lewis, and like how they really didn't care. They just came up with whatever they wanted to and pursued it so boldly that like their legacy is still living on, and now we're all obsessed with them because of movies and books coming out again and again. So, and I know I'll probably regret it if I don't mention my mom, but also my mother-in-law. So they're both very different in terms of how they do mother, but I connect with them both in such a different way that, like, I look up to them in such different ways. And, like, my mom, she had the pleasure of homeschooling me, and, like, she, like, regardless of how awful I was as a kid growing up and trying to figure myself out, like, she was so persistent in making sure that, like, I knew I was beautiful and loved, and she worked her butt off to make sure that she created so many beautiful memories. And so because of her, like, I'm very much into, like, traditions and memories and being intentional with holidays. And so I'm very thankful for that. And then my mother-in-law, I am so lucky because I know that's not the case for lots of people, where they marry into a family and they don't get to have a good relationship with their mother-in-law, and there's always, like, the monster-in-law. But, like, I know I'm very lucky to have, like, a beautiful relationship with my mother-in-law, and, like, I can connect with her so much, and, like, she's just so intentional with how she loves, but in a very different way than my mom. And so it's really, like, I want to pull women into my life that, like, inspire me to be better, not just settle, or not just be okay, but, like, hey, like, you work on how you love people, work on how you're communicating, work on how intentional you are, like, be intentional in thought and in action. And they both teach me to do that in very different ways.
That's so cool. The interesting thing when you were talking is I was thinking about the word role model, and I realized, we're picking out specific people, but actually we're all role models. Like, everyone should be a role model, right? It's like, if you really think about it, and here's just, let me just pose this to you. Here's why: because someone is always watching.
Yeah.
So we're always modeling something to someone.
Yeah.
So, like, actually everyone is a role model. Everyone that's watching, you're a role model because there's someone watching you.
Yeah.
Now, you're either doing a good job of being a role model or not, but that is just, like, the kind of opportunity that we have. Either are we going to step up to that place of maturity and responsibility, or if we're just going to sit back and do the opposite. So I found that really fascinating as you were talking, that those things were going through my head. And so it kind of, for some people, might be like, oh my gosh, that's kind of scary because, like, someone's watching me, but it's a real thing.
And it doesn't have to be this, like, huge pressure thing. Like, someone's watching me, I have to be someone else. Because I'm just like, even when we were talking, I'm like, like, I love, like, watching people on Instagram just, like, share their everyday life and share, like, the mundane things and, like, celebrate the mundane. Like, my sister is a mom, and, like, I watch a lot of the other people who are moms on Instagram, and it's just, like, I just feel like, especially moms, I don't know why, just, like, really, like, celebrate the mundane and, like, are, like, championing the mundane. Like, I don't know if there's, like, a movement happening now, or just, like, it's just because we have Instagram, but, like, I think that it's great, like, whatever your life looks like, to, like, celebrate that, whether that's, like, platform, to not, like, go after the platform, but if that's in your life, like, like, and your character be the same on platform or, like, at home, whatever. But I, like, love, like, certain people on Instagram who, like, really invite you into their everyday life, and it's like, oh, that is so beautiful,
Yeah, well, I think, like, I love watching people who do motherhood and, like, platform well, honestly, or motherhood and business, or motherhood and anything else well. Like, that's kind of who, because of exactly that. Like, because I feel like, there was a movie that came out a few years ago. It was with Sarah Jessica Parker. It's called, like, I Don't Know How She Does It. And it was all about, like, a mom who's, like, killing it at her career, but she had head lice one day and, like, sorry, spoiler. Now you know. No, it's actually a really fun movie. Like, I'd recommend rewatching it if you haven't. But it's never like that, right? Like, I know, you know, Havilah Cunnington is someone who I know you're friends with, and she's been a client of mine for a long time, and, like, she exemplifies, like, hey, I have 4 boys, but I also have a busy life, travel and speak, and things are crazy sometimes, you know? Or I have another client named Ali Casaza who does something really similar. She's a mother and has a business, and they're both, like, I look up to these women, and I'm like, wow, like, you guys all have kids and you're doing it, but you even are sharing the moments where, like, things aren't going great, you know? And so it's just like that, like, you don't have to be perfect to be a role model, and your life doesn't always have to be extravagant for you to be. And even if you have, you know, the platform, or even if you have all that stuff, or even if you don't, like you're talking about your sister. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe she's Insta famous. Like, what's up, girl? But, you know, but I love that, like, celebrating, just like, we're all human, and these are the moments that we have, and, like, let's do our best with them.
Yeah, and, like, seeing people have, like, their priorities, like, maybe not in order, but, like, having their priorities. I don't know, I just recently, like, Lisa Bevere, there was, like, a little Instagram clip where she was, like, she had been offered so many speaking roles that she turned down to, like, have, like, spend spring break with her boys. Yeah. And it's like, oh, nobody would know that, you know? And it's, like, character, priorities, family, all that stuff where it's, like, okay, you know, and we don't always get to see that. And so, I don't know where I'm going with that, but, you know.
It's like not setting the expectation to be perfect, to be seen, or, like, to be a role model. Like, for me, I'm always just like, oh, like, I can be better, I can do better. And then I'm like, well, what if I just worked on me being consistent, and then, like, whoever's watching, like, then I'm not, like, basing my actions off of, like, who's watching and who's not watching. Like, I want to be the same inside my home and outside my home. Like, and I think that's the biggest thing, is, like, recognizing my value, whether someone's watching me or not. Like, I know that, like, I'm being the best me that I can be, like, with the closed door, and being out, like, on stage or singing my heart out, which I don't do. I don't even like karaoke. But it's, like, working on just being consistent and being that, like, face. Like, because kids are always watching. Like, you always see those kids on YouTube where they're, like, swearing, and the parents are like, why did I do that? I'm like, well, we know what someone was saying in front of their kid. But, like, they're always watching, and I don't ever want to miss out on an opportunity to be a positive light in someone's life.
Yeah, and being a role model is not a performance-based thing. Like, being a role model is a heart thing. So whether that's character, whether it's vulnerability, whether it's authenticity, like, just all these different things that make it up, right? So it's like, you know, you guys were all saying something collective and cohesive, and really it comes down to, you don't have to perform. Like, it's not like there's a expectation. Yeah. But there is a standard. Yeah. You know, there is a standard in which we should model our lives in the sense of, like, what it looks like to be a good person, what it looks like to have integrity, like, what it looks like. We should have some of those things defined in our life, and kind of how we live our lives in those areas. And I think whether, you know, we do it the best or we don't, how we handle those situations, I think, to me, is a role model, you know? And so, I love that.
I think it's that quote, like, consistency is key. Like, every Yelp review out there, like, the restaurants with the best Yelp reviews are the ones where they deliver consistency. I think, unless someone's just really negative and they don't see the light in anything. But I think that, like, consistency is key, and like you were saying, I really want to be a person of consistency, so that my husband sees the same me I'm putting on at work, and they're seeing the same me that, like, I'd want my parents to see. And so I think it's easy to forget how important, like, your self-care, and, like, what's in my heart, and not neglecting my heart in how I want to be perceived, because it'd really suck if I had to perform for the rest of my life because I'm worried about everyone else. Yeah. And so I'm just like, oh, like, I really want to strive for that consistency and that integrity, and to just, like, it's kind of like role models, like, be a, like, real model, like, be a really pure exemplification of who you are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was one of the things that stood out to me about Andrea, my mentor, is because I got to see her live life real. It wasn't just like when she was speaking. It wasn't just
Yeah.
when she was around people. It was that consistency
Yeah.
where I'm like, she's the same person everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether she's a mom, whether she's a wife, whether she's in front of people or behind the scenes. And it's like, I loved that. And
Yeah.
to me, I think that meant the world
Yeah.
more than anything, is to watch someone who just unapologetically be themselves and just be considerate and thoughtful
Yeah.
Yeah.
of other people and how the way she lives her life affects other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that too comes down to like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to perform in private too. It's not like, oh, you're going to be perfect all the time. You're
Yeah.
not going to nail it all the time. It just means like, don't put on a mask wherever you are, like in public too, you know, like always just like evaluate your heart, but you know, don't try to like pretend all the time that you're like, so that
Be
you're
authentic.
pleasing people. Exactly.
Yeah. I definitely agree with the masks and not wearing different masks, but I do also think that we need different levels of filter. So for me personally, like I'm not on like what you get on the stage. My character is going to be the same, but you're not going to get the same level of depth and vulnerability from me there as you would if you're my best friend and we're just chilling on the sofa in our track pants, like whatever, you know. And so I think it depending on your life and who it is that you're influencing, just having that awareness that, oh, I'm going to need to filter some things in my life. Not because I'm trying to hide things in my life, but actually almost the opposite. I'm trying to keep them for the people who are closest to me, because then they, like, I'm not going to tell everyone everything I tell my husband, because then like there would be no nothing special about our relationship. And so I have different levels of filter depending on different levels of publicity that I step into. And so I definitely am not saying change your character, but you aren't going to get completely unfiltered Renee. Like my best friend is going to get unfiltered Renee, or my husband.
I think that's what makes you a great role model, is like you have really healthy boundaries, you know? And it's like, oh, we all need that in our life, whether it's on stage or just in certain friendships and stuff. I think that that's really healthy that you probably don't get on stage and share things like with a bunch of people who don't know context. That like your husband would know, or your best friend.
Yeah.
So
I make so many social media posts, and I'm like, I'm just gonna take that down.
You vent for a second.
I do. I have to think like, is this beneficial like to the conversation?
Yeah.
And am I being a role model in this moment, or am I frustrated and I just want to share my opinion because you know? And so
I agree with you, because I think there's different levels of access that people should have to you. And then also too, you have to take into consideration when you are on a larger platform, right? Like you don't know everyone's personal journey. And some things that you can say to someone else, it might actually affect a different person in a negative way. Because of maybe their history, maybe certain situations that they're working through. So I think there's wisdom in exactly what you said. And it's the same thing. It's like, I was sharing with them, I was hanging out with my girlfriends the other night, and there are things that I would say there with my girlfriends that I wouldn't say like here on Truth Be Told or around other people. And it's just because those are close relationships to me, and those are people that I've built trust with and that we have actual history with. And I think that goes along with that. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I agree with you. It doesn't change or affect if you have character or not. It's just that there's public consumption, there's private consumption, and there's different level of access that I think people should have in your life. And I think it's a healthy boundary. So
I feel like even with the promotion of vulnerability, which I'm very much for, like, yes, let's be authentic, let's be vulnerable, but like sometimes we go a little bit overboard, you know, like we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Like we're all about vulnerability, and I'm like, yes, we are, but we also have to pick and choose where we're vulnerable and what we're being vulnerable with, and just steward that well in order, I think, to be a good role model. So
and I think sometimes people build platforms with that, and it's really not vulnerability. So I'm gonna speak to that, because
it's true.
I'm just gonna be honest. Like sometimes I feel like people are leveraging people who actually want access to real vulnerability, and they're using it as a marketing tool to get you to buy something from them.
Yeah.
And I'm not down for that. It's not authentic. What's authentic is when you're doing something not out of the motivation to receive something, but you're doing it because you think it's going to benefit another person. To me, that's true vulnerability.
True. Yeah, I 100% agree.
Sorry, I just got hot for a second.
No, it's real.
I was like, I'm going to call that.
You need to talk about it. I mean,
It's
sometimes
so true.
we were talking about this with our friend Stephanie. Like, sometimes people, like, they need to actually talk to a therapist or call a friend instead of going right to Instagram.
That's it.
Like,
like I have a rule in my life. Like, I won't put anything on social media if I haven't talked to a real human about it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And I think I've even had to learn, like, with social media to, like, okay, I can be vulnerable, but, like, with boundaries. Like, I don't have to be specific, like, instance vulnerable, like, where I share, like, specifics of an instance where, like, I feel like you can be... That's just me.
Yeah.
Like, a more general vulnerability, or specific where it's not, like, you get access to, like, the depths of my heart on social media.
Well, and, like, I have that rule. I won't, like, if I can't say to this person face to face, I'm not going to say it on social media, because then that just means that person doesn't have that place in my life and I don't have it in theirs. So why say it?
And sometimes it is about, like, oh, actually, sometimes I just have to have a hard conversation instead of being, like, passive aggressive on social media. Like, some people, you know.
It's so true. And you can read through it. Yeah. Like, honestly, like, we have to be more in tune with what we're consuming and what we actually believe when we consume it. Like, we all are very intuitive, and I think if we actually allow ourselves to be real with what we're consuming, I think it would benefit us better as a whole society. And I, to be honest, I really am passionate about authenticity and vulnerability. And when I see people manipulating it, it actually makes me very sad, because there are people who are very vulnerable in you know, kind of receiving advice or signing up for something and people and paying for it, and then they don't get the help that they need, like actually going to a counselor or something like that, where a professional might be able to actually really give them the help that they need to have a better life.
I actually am, like, in the process of trying to teach my daughter, who's 6, by the way, and I'm like, how do you grow up so fast? But I'm trying to teach her that, like, popularity doesn't equal role model. So just because someone is popular, it doesn't mean they're a good role model. And just because you've got 10,000 Instagram followers or 100,000 Instagram followers, it doesn't actually mean that we should be looking to those people on how to live our lives. And sometimes we should, and sometimes they're amazing. But we shouldn't just make the automatic assumption that popularity makes you a good role model, because it's just not the case.
So, you guys, it's that time. We're going to announce who won our first giveaway. Now, we were really pumped to partner with this company, Second Kind Beauty, and they gave us some amazing skincare that we all have been using in our everyday routine. And so, the winner of our first giveaway is, drumroll please, at Michelle Lewis _ you are the winner. We're going to DM you and we're going to get the wonderful product over to you. We're super excited. Please share with us your journey with the products, because we'd love to shout you out on our Instagram as well.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of Truth Be Told, and we would love for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel below and click the like button. We also have a Instagram account, and we would love for you to follow along. We've got some fun stuff coming up on that as well, and we can't wait to see you next time. And we would also love to hear from you about who your role models are. So write them in the comments below and we will check in with you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.